on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:36 here on this President's Day. Thanks for tuning in and being part of our celebration. Appreciate you joining us. Coming up at 8:05, Zach Smith of Heritage Foundation will talk about the judgment up in New York against President Trump and how it's going to affect the elections. Everyone's talking about, and we sort of talked about it with Joe DeGeneva, and I'm seeing other cable. Let's talk about the appeals process. They did the damage.
Yeah.
I don't care about the appeal. I mean, I'm sure for Mr. Trump personally, and obviously that's a big deal here. But the bigger deal is what they brazenly did to affect the election. They just did this thing, and no matter how the appeals process ends up, they can never take that back.
Yeah.
And we should never forget that. That's Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
I am Larry O'Connor. And let's try to be, let's trying to get zen today. I'm trying to be a little more centered and not get angry. It's a federal holiday. We're supposed to look back and honor certainly Washington and Lincoln, what we used to do, and then they turned it into, all presidents. I don't want to focus on this president. He angers me.
Yeah, me too.
Let's talk about good presidents. Jane Hampton Cook is here. She is a presidential historian. She can save this entire conversation now by telling us about the good presidents. Although Jane, hello. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Just saw a survey done by the American Association of Political Scientists, and they ranked the presidents.
Oh, I know.
They just ranked Joe Biden 2 positions above Ronald Reagan.
I know.
This is what we get up. How
cool
can you even trust historians anymore, Jane?
But can we get excited? How cool is it that Jane has presidential historian as her title?
Right, exactly.
That's
but
very
I don't
cool.
know. I mean, when people do things like that,
That's
Jane,
true.
you probably it's like, geez, I don't want to be in that club.
Well, whenever I get a survey like that, I always go Republican as best I can on, and rank modern, certain people down really low because I know other people are ranking them really high.
Oh, I see. So you offset things there. I appreciate that.
Better-
I only get one vote. They probably get more than one vote, right? So,
Yeah, exactly. So what should Americans do here? By the way, her most recent books, War of Lies, When George Washington Was the Target and Propaganda Was the Crime, and The Submarine and the Spies. Oh, I got to get that. Friendship and Vigilance in the American Revolution. What should Americans do this presidency? Because it is convoluted. It used to be very straightforward. You had Washington's birthday, you have Lincoln's birthday, and now what, we're supposed to celebrate Millard Fillmore?
Oh, that's pretty funny. After George Washington died, he died in December, and people honored his birthday in the following February. They were grieving. So really, President's Day kind of has its beginnings in this idea of honoring George Washington and remembering, all that he did and all that he sacrificed for America. And that's really what it should be. It's the sacrifice for America. He gave up, his quiet life, and he was a general. He commanded an army during a very, very difficult war that he was not expected to win, yet he won. And he was humble about it. And he didn't really want to be president, but he did it because that's what the country needed. And he gave up power. I think what we see now in our politics is power-hungry people, where there isn't this sense of humility and this sense of, I'm doing this for Americans, it's not for me. I think we see too much of me and not nearly enough of thinking about other people and who we're leading. And so I think to look this President's Day, let's think about the goodness of George Washington, the good things that he did. And I think that's helpful and a little bit healing, that it's not always been like this.
Jane, one other thing that this is sort of new to our culture is demonizing the founders, our Constitution, the American way of life, American history. So many kids today, not just K through 12, but also in higher education, as we've seen recently, have been taught that America is a terrible place, and that our founders were all, slave owners, and we should be ashamed of our American heritage. What do you think parents should do to help push back on this narrative? Obviously, a lot of parents are choosing not to send their kids to these woke schools, but let's be real. This is throughout the culture. What do you advise parents, or how do you advise parents to push back on this?
Well, I mean, I think it's looking for the truth and finding resources and things that you can show your children that do talk about those virtues and the truth. I've been writing a series that's going to come out in the summer about patriotic books for kids.
Oh, nice.
What is the American flag? What is the Pledge of Allegiance? You know, what about My Country 'Tis of Thee and America the Beautiful? Because I noticed that there were no books in this genre on patriotism. And that, I think, focusing on those core values is something that parents can do, and talk about, you know, the virtues of the flag. The flag has 7 virtues. You know, red means valor and hardiness. White means innocence and purity, and we're protecting the innocence of our children right now against this culture. Blue means justice, perseverance, and vigilance. And so those are some things. And I'm trying to write different books about the Revolution for different interests. A history mystery, which is what the War of Lies is, the Submarine and the Spies is a novel. To get that into schools and get it into part of the curriculum, because only 13% of 8th graders are proficient in American history. That was a statistic from last year. So, you know, we have to be proactive in teaching our children these things.
Our guest is presidential historian Jane Hampton Cook. You can find information about her at janecook.com. You've worked in a White House before, and I've got to think just the nature of the job. You know, when a president shows up to work every day, goes down those stairs, walks through the corridors of 1600 Pennsylvania, sits down at the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, are presidents, based on your firsthand experience, I know they're cognizant of the fact that everything they do and everything they say is historic, but how much of that is actually taken into account when they have to make decisions? It's like, what will history say about this? And by the way, is it a good thing if it is sort of there in the back of their mind or even in the forefront of their mind? Sometimes I would think that it could paralyze you from making a decision.
Yeah, I think that's true. If you think too much about it, you know, I think you have to do what you think is right in what is in the context of everything that's going on. I think, you know, some presidents look to historians to, when there's not that passion and emotion attached to, like, we don't know anything about Millard Fillmore, so we can probably evaluate him objectively, right? We never voted for the man. Mm-hmm. But so that is part of their equation, but you can't live your presidency, and you can be suffocated by something like that too. And you know, I remember when I was working in the White House with Mercedes. She and I shared an office. Mercedes Schlapp and I shared an office. Oh, how fun! Yes, and you know, so I remember at that time there was a respect for the office. There was a concern for how, you know, how people will revere it, and I don't see that right now. I remember being asked on Fox, you know, about the transition between Bush and Obama and how smooth it was, and now we're learning how incredibly unsmooth and corrupt the transition to Trump. And I'm like, you know, that's not fair. That feels like you're not giving what you got, basically. That's hard.
So, Jane, you're sharing an office with then Mercedes Viana during the George Herbert Walker Bush presidency. How often was Matt hanging around? Was he like sort of like constantly, hey, Mercedes, you want to go out for drinks afterwards? You want to do that? Or is this one of those things where he was dating you and then it didn't go well and he ended up going with Mercedes? I want the story.
Well, I was the only member of that staff in my little office who was married. So that really would have been a scandal if that had been.
Oh, all right. Forgive me for even going there. I thought you were about to say I'm the only one in the office that didn't date Matt.
No.
All right.
So anyway, we got to know Matt. He would pop up and say hello.
That's very fun. I bet he did. Well, I say that just as a preview, since this is CPAC week, and so they're going to be in the news quite a bit, but that's pretty fun. Jane Hampton Cook, janecook.com. Thank you. It's always great to speak with you on days like this.
Thank you so much for having me.
7:45 WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes, first on the fives.